Now it
Right.
starts to look ugly.
Right.
But we transition to the defense, okay? And now this is where I feel like the grass is definitely greener when you start talking about this side of the
Absolutely.
ball.
Right.
And it's like I don't remember last time I've been so giddy about talking about like a Raiders defense before. I don't
Right.
remember. But
Right.
where first of all, a lot of people are saying top 10 defense, right? I would agree we can be a top 10 defense, but then I start holding the horses when people start talking about a top 5.
Right.
Only reason I say that is because I still believe we got some holes that need to be addressed. Primarily, cornerback 2, linebacker depth. It scares me, right, when it comes to that. I mean, when you look at this defense, I know it looks good, but where are the weak spots to you when it comes to that?
That's an interesting question. So, I do agree with the linebacker room in general, right? Because I do have faith that Robert Splain's going to be a good linebacker,
Oh, for
right?
sure. Yeah,
No
that.
question about Robert Splain. I do question Divine Diablo a little bit,
Yep.
right? He's really never developed. He's really never taken that step, and he's been here for 3 years, right?
Thank you.
Now
Thank
there's
you.
a possibility that year 4 is the year that he takes off, right? Like athletically, Divine Diablo's he's the most athletic linebacker we have. And it's
Oh, for
like
sure.
different. It's a different speed,
For
right? The
sure.
way he moves. But that doesn't really matter, right? We're talking about football. It doesn't everybody's fast, everybody's big.
And not even to cut you off, bro, but I said this last week. If we're talking about Divine Diablo and somebody starts with his measurables, like, bro, he done been here for 3 years. I know how tall
Right, right,
and how
right, right.
fast he is, bro. Like, you feel what I'm saying? Like, I need to see the football now.
Right. Now, I think there's a chance Luke Masterson's going to replace him. And I think
Okay.
Luke Masterson is going to end up having, he won't be as good as Robert Splain, obviously, but he'll take that similar path to Robert Splain ultimately took. And I think there's a chance Luke Masterson replaces Divine Diablo this season. And
Okay.
then after the season ends, right, like we'll see a shift where Diablo starts off. Masterson eventually gets more snaps ahead of him as the season goes on. And then Diablo ends up just leaving the Raiders after the season. And then Masterson's the starting linebacker going into next season.
Okay.
Masterson has a ton of upside, in my opinion.
I like Masterson. I do. I
Right.
like Masterson.
Right. And then with Tommy Eichenberg, we'll see what he can develop into. I don't expect anything out of him this season.
I'm intrigued on Tommy Eichenberg, though. I do think, like when you talk about shorts and shirt, he's not going to surprise you or anything, but I think he's a football player, like a natural football player.
Right.
Honestly.
Right. I definitely agree with you. I like him long term for sure. I just think when it comes to rookie year,
oh yeah,
not every guy's going to have success. I think linebackers in their rookie seasons don't always have a lot of success. Right? I think it takes linebackers a year or so because the speed's just different, right? Obviously, in the NFL, calls are different. Linebackers are oftentimes expected to do a lot more in the NFL as well. I do agree with you on what you're saying with the linebackers. I do think there's some weaknesses there. But I will also say this, I think if there are weaknesses with the linebackers, I think Isaiah Palamau helps the linebacker unit because there's going to be a lot of times where we're going to play nickel defense or, that big dime defense where you ultimately end up putting Palamau at the linebacker position. Right.
Speaking music to my ears right now, man. My guys know I like Palamau, man. That's my guy right there.
I think he's going to break out this season. And I think Marcus Epps is a good football player. I think Trayvon Merrick's a good football player. And I think these guys are smart and they're well coached. And I think Patrick Graham's such a phenomenal coach. I am so glad that the Raiders brought in Patrick Graham. And it's crazy because after that first year, a lot of us are like, is this guy going to be a good coach?
We were scarred by the Paul Gunther. So we were like, we don't know.
Exactly. But he's not that, and you can tell, Patrick Graham was with Bill Belichick, I think, in the past, right? And you can tell Patrick Graham knows how to coach defensive back, right? And Bill Belichick does as well. And I saw this video from years back. Like, I think they were talking about the Malcolm. What's the cornerback's name that got the interception?
Oh, Malcolm Butler.
Right. So there was a moment where it was like a 20-minute video around that one play that he had that interception, and Patrick Graham was sitting with Bill Belichick in the cornerback room, and they're talking to the guys, and it was one of those things where and this was just 3 weeks ago. It really made me realize why Patrick Graham does a great job with the defensive backs, and our defensive backs are freaking legit. We might not realize it right away because these guys don't have a ton of interceptions, and they're not straight up just shutting people down. But historically, our defense lines also sucked, right? Our defensive line, in Patrick Graham's first year, the defensive line sucked. In his second year, for half the season, the defensive line was underperforming.
Yep.
And I think to have a good defensive back unit, you got to have a good D line, right? You got to be able to pass rush because it benefits the defense. These guys can't cover forever, right? I don't really see the second cornerback position or the third, whatever you want to say, outside of Jack Jones and Nate Hobbs. I don't really see that being that much of an issue. I think that the Raiders have, they have Jacory Bennett, they have Brandon Faison. Faison's been in the NFL. What is this, like his 5th or 6th year in the NFL?
Yeah, he's up there. He's like his 5th or 6th year or something like that.
Right, and then you got the other 2 rookies as well. So Bennett was a 4th round pick last year.
Yeah.
And then we got another guy in the 4th round this year in Richardson.
Yep.
I'm not worried about the corners or the defensive backs at all. Honestly, I don't really see there being too many issues with this defense. I think we have, on paper, a top 5 defense. And then I think coaching wise, our defensive, our coach, our defensive coordinator is a phenomenal coach. Right. So there should be no reason why the defense should not be legit. Now, it may not rank as like a top 5 defense because I think our offense might struggle. We might have like turnovers. We might have, we get in situations where a team gets up 10 points and then we start forcing some things. So the defense might give up more points because of those type of things. I love this defense, man. I cannot be more excited for this defense.
100%. And only reason I'm bringing it up is like, we got to be able to point out just a little bit of the flaws. My thing, right? Because I saw your video that you posted and put out about free agents that the Raiders could look at, right? Stephon Gilmore, 100%. Right. Not only just because of the ability factor too, but just I think too we need a veteran in there. I've been saying it for the longest. Like we need a veteran in this very, very young DB room, right? You know what I mean? Right. It's just gonna help the development of everybody that's in there. If you got a guy like Stephon Gilmore in there, right? Like that's where I'm thinking.
Yeah, and then another thing is it's like we brought in Marcus Peters last year. I think that was a terrible signing, right? Not because of he couldn't be a good football player, but when I look at Patrick Graham's one of the smartest coaches in the NFL, right? Like he knows, especially when it comes to defensive backs, right? He needs guys that are smart, right? So one of the reasons why Jack Jones came in here and had success, even though Patrick Graham had never worked with Jack Jones in the past, was Jack Jones came from the Bill Belichick scheme, right? He came from that same.
That's true.
Those things, and I think as he came here, Patrick Graham can utilize those type of guys. Right. And then you look at a guy like Jack Jones, a guy like Nate Hobbs, who's also very, very smart. Again, we'll see what happens with Jacory Bennett or Brandon Faison, but I wouldn't be mad at going out and getting, JC Jackson's available. He's from that same tree.
I've heard that as well.
So there's some options out there, and I think the Raiders should definitely consider it. Gilmore would be the guy, right? I think that's the guy you gotta really try to bring in. I think he's like up 10 to 15 corner.
I like that one. I think he would just make sense. And you just talked about kind of Jack Jones and his kind of touches and all that with Bill Belichick's scheme. Same with Gilmore, right? Comes here, he's very familiar. Now we just talked about the D line, right? And we think that is probably the strength, not probably, but I think it is the strength of the defense at this point right now. Right. But we have a super chat right here. Shout out to On6. He asked, what is Nesta J. Silvera's chances on making the team? Now, my thing is this, and I've said this too. I think it would bode well to get more rotation in there, right? It would just bode well to get more rotation. Now, we talk about the DTs. After Christian Wilkins, we're good.
Right
now, or Adam Butler too, John Jenkins, but then you start talking about some of the guys who are kind of on the fringe to make the team.
Right.
Byron Young, Nesta J. Silvera. Where's his chances on making the team? Byron Young and stuff like that.
Yeah. First and foremost, shout out to Aunt Six, man. Always supporting, man. Really, really, really appreciate you. It's interesting because we're gonna have a tough cut. We're gonna have probably 2 tough cuts because. Right. Christian Wilkins is a D tackle. He's going to make it. John Jenkins, Adam Butler. You got 3 guys that are 100% locked in.
For sure.
I think at max, you have 3 more D tackles. And I think that's like at max. That might even be too much, to be honest. We might only bring a total of 5 defensive tackles. So the top 3 are already locked in. And then you basically have Byron Young, Matthew Butler, Nesta Jade Silvera, and Marquand McCall. That's 4 guys that are going to basically competing for two spots.
Right.
And the hard thing is like, you know, Marquand McCall, the Raiders basically gave him a contract to bring him back in this season. All right. He could have went to another team. You look at a guy like Matthew Butler, who you drafted in the 5th round. Byron Young was a 3rd round pick. That's a crazy ass investment to make. You know, 1st, 2nd, 3rd rounds, I think are they're high. They're high. You know, 2nd and 3rd, people might sleep on it, but those are high investments to make. You find superstar caliber players in the 2nd and 3rd rounds. All right. And we took Byron Young. And I don't see a world in which we cut Byron Young, right? But I mean, let's say Nesta Jade Silvera is dominating during camp, and let's say Matthew Butler takes the year 3 leap, and you're like, well, we don't want these 2 guys to go, right? Let's say they have phenomenal preseasons. You know, you got to start thinking like, who's the guy that you have to ultimately cut?
Right.
Now, we did cut both Matthew Butler and Nesta Jade Silvera last season, and I think they went through like the waiver process, and we signed them back to the practice squad. The good thing is no one picked them up. Right, no one ended up claiming them during that process. We lost, I think, Drake Thomas, the linebacker, last year, as well as the other offensive lineman,
McClendon Curtis. Did we not? Which I liked him.
McClendon Curtis, right. Yeah, so and we lost them through that waiver process, right? And I hate that the practice.
Yeah,
I hate that it works like that. That if you want to bring someone into the actual game, that you have to release them to get them back onto the practice squad. I hate that you have to do that, but.
Yeah, that don't make no sense.
Right. But it is what it is, you know. And we did do that with Butler and Silvera last year where we released them, but we brought them back on the practice squad. So I think there's a world where we can release both of those guys and bring them back to the practice squad. And then we can end up keeping Marquand McCall as well as Byron Young, right? Like on the active roster. McCall is kind of the wild card in my opinion. Because some people
I haven't seen too much of him. I don't know what he'll be able to do.
He was good. I think it was the Panthers. He was legit with the Panthers, right? I think 2022 was his first year. He was supposed to be the starting defensive tackle for the Panthers going into his 2nd season, and then he had a knee injury and he didn't pass his physical. They released him. The Patriots came in and picked him up right away. They did the physical. They realized that his knee's messed up. They ended up releasing him right away as well, or maybe the contract didn't go through or whatever. And then the Raiders waited a little bit, but then we brought him in. So he's a guy that has upside.
Okay.
Right? He's big. He's one of those Jordan Davis caliber of players where you got like guys like 6'5", 350, right? He's one of those massive guys. So
that'd be beautiful.
He's a guy to keep an eye on for sure as well.